Sometimes even good people can make a mistake. And when it happens, it's one of the most intense and emotional experiences of your life. It could be a DUI, or maybe you were in the wrong place with the wrong people at the wrong time. Or perhaps you just did something stupid at the spur of the moment without even thinking, and now you're in trouble with the law. Well, you need experienced legal help right away so you don't become a victim of the criminal justice system. Even good people can make a mistake, and if you, a friend, or loved one has been accused of a crime, don't make another mistake by hiring the wrong attorney for the kind of help you need. You need to visit toddjohnslaw.com. That's toddjohnslaw.com, and then call Attorney Todd Johns today. Attorney Todd Johns has decades of experience helping good people like you who have made mistakes or bad decisions and will stand by you every step of the way. toddjohnslaw.com.
Hello, and welcome to That's Enough Out of You. I am your host, Bill Rader, and joining me, as he does every week, is my co-host, Sean Kane. Sean, how's it going?
Billy Raids, how you doing, buddy?
I'm feeling a little bit under the weather today, but we'll get through it. Lots going on, Sean, with the podcast. Lots happening.
Yeah.
With our Patreon, with
Right.
YouTube, with just a lot of stuff.
Well, we're real close, Bill, to getting the amount of subscribers we need. If people could just hit that subscribe button, it costs nothing. And then on Patreon, with a lot of good stuff going on over there. You could get it for as little as $1 or more if you could afford it, but a lot of really good stuff.
Yeah.
I know there's people joining as a free member, but for just $1, you could upgrade and get so much information, and you get the speakeasy episodes that we're putting out, and they're getting better and better. We're getting more guests for the speakeasy. We got a lot of guests lined up for Cybersecurity Month. We got Matt Serba lined up and Michael Pilch. And, we're getting more guests. We got Scott Alfieri's going to come on the Speakeasy, and he's going to talk about an article he wrote on James Angleton on a Substack. So there's a lot of good stuff going on Patreon, Billy.
Yeah, make sure you check us out on Patreon. Our link to the Patreon is on all of our posts and everything, so not hard to find, and it's worth it. It is. Like I said, Sean, it's you could start with $1. You could pay more if you wanted to, but that's certainly up to you. But yeah, you can't do much better than that for $1 a month. So that's
Really,
it's $12 a year.
Check out our website because there's so much stuff. We got all the links to everything on there. Our bookshop, you could order books of all the authors we have on. Our merch stores on there. That helps us out. We got blog articles on there, all our links to social media. And on social media, Billy, anytime people make comments and get discussions started, that helps us. That helps our algorithm. And now that's something we're struggling with because, of course, Musk on Twitter, he's got everything screwed up, and that's hurting us. And the algorithm on YouTube, they're still putting disclaimers on our videos, and so we need some help there. And so that helps us. Social media discussions helps our algorithm.
Yeah, definitely. And that's where we get, a lot of the comments for these shows that we're doing, these question and answer shows and comment shows. Much of that comes from our YouTube page. So we encourage you to
Facebook and Twitter though, Billy, too. A lot of that comes from Facebook and Twitter as well.
Yep. Sure.
Keep them coming because we'll get up to all the questions. This is going to be a great episode, Billy. There's some great questions there. So,
all right,
ready, let's
go. Let's go. In fact, I'll start with. Let's see. Oh, I got to zoom in a little bit, Sean. I'm not as young as I used to be. These old eyes.
Now you're getting old, Billy.
I am. All right, Christopher Kimball 8534 sent us this comment. Love your podcast. The guests are awesome, and I think they appreciate your knowledge of these monstrous topics, and they are conversing with a peer instead of a rookie, so to speak. It's a lesson disguised as a conversation, and that is a cool way to learn. That's true. I think a lot of the authors and the guests that we have, Sean, they tend to go on these podcasts where, the host knows absolutely nothing about the topic, and they're shocked by all of this
Right.
stuff. And, in our case, I mean, if it was just me, honestly, I think, it'd be similar, but because you do so much research and you've been, studying this for so long, you have these intelligent conversations, and it kind of gives me the opportunity to ask the questions that maybe the layperson would ask, and have the experts in the room to answer.
And that's what I think makes our podcast work so well, but
Right.
yeah, I mean, when we bring these guests on, I mean, that's one thing. A lot of times it is like a really good discussion, and I see so many other podcasts that our authors go on, and it's just not a good discussion when it's one-sided all the time, and then you have to stop and explain because the interviewer just doesn't know anything about the subject, and that's frustrating. So yeah, thank you for the comment there. Who was that said that, Billy?
Christopher Kimball.
Thank you, Christopher.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Appreciate you listening and appreciate your support. That's a great comment.
And Billy, that is one thing though that authors do say, like when they come on and stuff, and this is why we're getting a lot of requests anymore. I don't have to reach out to people; they're reaching out to us.
Right.
So that's one thing that they do say. They enjoy that. They see that when other authors come on, that we get good discussions going, and we know the subject matter.
Absolutely, that helps for sure. All right, let's move on, Sean. The Horseshoe in Ohio. I wonder who that person is a fan of.
Yeah, the Buckeyes.
Yeah. Bill and Sean, we love it when you guys talk sports. We really enjoyed Nathan's college football article on your website. Great job, young man. 2 college football questions. Do you think the game has passed Dabo Sweeney by? And we are not on Patreon, so we couldn't view the college football Blue Bloods episode. Sean, did you put Navy and Army on your list?
Well, first thing there, thanks for that. Shout out to Nathan. He did do a great job with that article. We're still getting a ton of views on that, Billy.
Yeah.
And he was pretty good. Like he had Florida State wrong, but everybody had Florida. I had Florida State wrong. Nobody, Mark Adamczyk, who's a big fan, nobody expected 1-5 from Florida State. Yep. And I still say, Billy, that the one game they're going to show up for is Notre Dame later. If Notre Dame,
of course,
they are going to play the game of their life. That's going to be a Super Bowl, and that's going to be a close game. And that's the one game on the schedule left that I'm worried the most about is that game, actually. But that's the one thing he got wrong. But Nathan is pretty good there. He did a good job there. The question about Dabo Sweeney, no, I don't think the game passed him by. I think he needs to adjust, Billy, because the one thing about Dabo is he doesn't accept transfers, and he's not using the transfer portal at all. And in this day and age, you have to. You don't have to get your entire team from the portal like Florida State's been doing, and that helped them one year, hurt them the next. But you have to fill in the gaps with recruiting misses through the portal. And Dabo Sweeney just refuses to do that. But everybody threw dirt on Dabo, Billy, after Georgia pounded them the first game. And you know what they've done since then? They've quietly won impressively. So he's back in track, and he may end up winning the ACC, Billy. It wouldn't shock me if Dabo wins the ACC and gets into the playoffs. So no, I don't think the game passed him by. He's a tremendous coach, no matter what you think of him. You might not like him because he's always crying to the officials and this and that, but he is one hell of a ball coach. I respect him as a coach. He's tremendous.
Yeah.
And what was the other question, Billy, about?
The other question was about your Blue Bloods episode. Army and Navy, were they on I think they were honorable mentions or something, were they?
Yeah, they were. We didn't have them on the list because you can take, just, during the war periods when they were really strong, and then, they didn't have enough history. But I will say this, both Army and Navy are undefeated this year, and Notre Dame's got to play both of them. So they may be ranked when Notre Dame plays them. So can you imagine a Notre Dame Army or Notre Dame Navy ranked matchup? Like if Notre Dame moves up into the top 10, they're 11 right now. So if they move up and then Army Navy get into the top 20, I mean, that'd be great to see, because, I got a lot of respect for the academies and love watching them play, and they always play tough, and they'll be tough games. And I'm going to the one, I'm taking Nathan to the Meadowlands to see the Navy game. So that's going to be great. But no, they didn't make the list, but they, like you said, Billy, put them honorable mention.
Right, for sure. All right. Thank you, Horseshoe. All right. Next question comes from Dave Schumal in Phoenix, Arizona. Sean and Bill, did you two research the allegations that Johnny Rosselli was training sniper units at JM Wave Station in Miami for invasions into Cuba? I never understood why the CIA would use Rosselli as a trainer when they have access to military snipers? Please make me understand.
I can't make you understand because I don't believe that. And I know I'm going to probably aggravate a lot of researchers because a lot of researchers just bought that, Billy, and a lot of, really good researchers just report that. And the thing is, Billy, that came from an Army veteran by the name of Bradley Ayers, who said that he was training down there at Jam Wave and that Rosselli was doing that. But here's the problem, Billy. Johnny Rosselli, they call him Handsome Johnny. This is a guy, Billy, who never had a hair out of place. He got manicures. This is not a guy who is going to be dressed as Rambo, training snipers in Navy SEAL type missions and taking them into Cuba. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous, Billy. If you could get a picture of Rosselli and put it up there, he was the Dapper Don before the Dapper Don John Gotti. I mean, he was the guy who was walking around with Hollywood actresses, not Marilyn Monroe. That was a fallacy, but other Hollywood actresses. And, he's a guy like, so, I mean, was he getting the manicures before or after the Navy SEAL missions? I mean, come on, and I don't buy it because it's all coming from one guy. Now, the importance of Rosselli, Billy, is he was involved with the CIA. We know that with the Castro plots. But the thing about Rosselli, Billy, is, and I said this before, guys like him are so valuable to the CIA because they could get contract killers from anywhere. Rosselli wasn't that. Rosselli was a diplomat. He started in Boston. He got into with Winter Hill, and he went off to Chicago, and he became a member of the outfit. And then he went to the outfit, sent him to Vegas, to Hollywood, and he became very diplomatic with the unions. He was very close with mob bosses across the country. So he's a guy, Billy, that you could send him to New England to see Old Man Patriarcha. You could send him to Kansas City to see the Kansas City mob. I mean, he's a guy that could sit down with everybody. And that's what's valuable about him. Now, with the CIA, did they give him poison, true trafficante to get to some people in the hotel restaurant unions to poison Castro? Yes, that's probably the way they use them. But to think that he's training snipers, Billy, what makes you think that he has the training to do that? Like, where is that? You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't have any type of training like that in his background. Mob hits, Bill, we talk about this all the time. What is it? 22 to 38 to the back of the head.
To the back of the head, right.
And it's your best friend that you have access to him. And that's what happens. And it's these guys are not snipers. Like, it's just, that doesn't make any sense to me. So no, I don't believe that. And there's a lot of stuff, Billy. There's this mob spies thing on Paramount-Plus now. And it's got a lot of the stuff about the Castro hits. And of course they bring the Kennedys into it. And as soon as I seen Gerald Posner's name on it, Billy, I start laughing. But the thing that gets me is they also had John Binder on it. And John Binder's the guy that Jim D'Eugenio talked about, who did all the work, Billy, on the election, the 1960 election. And he said that there's no way that there was a fix in that election. And they bring John Binder on and they don't ask him that question, Bill. They never ask him about the election. You know why? Because it doesn't fit their storyline.
Right.
It doesn't fit their storyline. And then they talk about the Kennedys with the Castro hits that started under Eisenhower. We talked with Jim about this. We talked with Bill Davey about this. They didn't find out, the Kennedys didn't find out about that until later, and then they wanted it stopped. The CIA's own Inspector General reports say that the Kennedys didn't know about the plots in Castro. They didn't know about them. They started before Kennedy was president. So, no, Billy. Long answer there, but no, I don't believe that until I see other documentation. I can't take the word of one guy of something that doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense, Billy, especially when we know the CIA's got trained killers all over. They could pull Navy SEAL or Marine Corps or Army Rangers to do training.
Yeah.
Why are they getting a mob guy, Billy?
Yeah, I mean, I think about, the modern comparison would be like Paulie Walnuts. The closest he got was
Exactly
like running through the woods.
Well, Billy, if you're gonna send a hit team in to kill Osama bin Laden, are you gonna make a call over to Bada Bing Club to get some mob guys, or are you gonna send Navy SEALs?
Exactly.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Dave in Phoenix. Next question comes from Ludwig Wisniewska. Wow. I think that's how you pronounce this name. And then I'm not even going to try to pronounce the city because it's all consonants, but this Ludwig is in Poland. Just shows you the reach of our show, Sean.
Really? I know.
Okay, I just discovered your podcast and absolutely love it. Bill and Sean, your knowledge of key historical happenings is remarkable. The guest you bring on, is a who's who of historians. What makes your podcast work is how humble both of you are and how you work so well together. Sean explains complex operations, and Bill jumps in with questions that we are all thinking. Which is what I said before.
Yeah, that's pretty much.
You guys are amazing. Keep up the great work. One request: do more wrestling episodes and talk about Polish Power Ivan Putski.
Yeah, there we go. Polish Power. That was my grandfather's favorite wrestler, Billy. Polish Power.
I remember seeing him many, many times here in Scranton at the CYC. He was always at the CYC, Sean. Every single time they had an event there, you could make sure.
He was so jacked, Billy. He was.
But
top of muscle.
I mean, by the time I started watching wrestling, which was sort of like early to mid 80s, he was almost towards the end of his career there. He was getting a little long in the tooth, but he was still in amazing shape.
Yeah.
But they always had him like on the, the opening matches.
Yeah. But he was competing in strongman competitions, Billy, like later in his life. Like, I think he was in his 50s, maybe 60s. He was still competing. And then, of course, he had a son that wrestled, Scott Putski.
That's right. Yep.
But yeah, Polish Power was great. He was just massive in the ring. He was really good.
Yeah. And as far as wrestling shows, I know we're going to do one on the Vince McMahon documentary series on Netflix. So that'll be.
And we did talk about that on a Speakeasy Patreon if people want to join to see that. So
absolutely. But that episode will probably be either late this year or early next year. We'll do that. All right. Thank you, Ludwig. Appreciate it.
Thank you, buddy.
All right. Another one that's going to be tough for me to pronounce, Sean, and I apologize profusely if I'm butchering these names.
You probably do better than I would, Billy, even though I'm Polish.
Molnar Zabo, I believe, in, oh boy, let's just say in Slovakia. How about that? Gentlemen, love the Joe McBride episode. You need to bring him back. We are.
Yeah, he's scheduled.
My question on my mind is, do you believe with all the KKK members in the Dallas PD that this could be a Klan operation, at least at the mechanics level of the plot to kill Kennedy? Keep up the great work.
No,
I don't think the KKK has that kind of. Yeah.
In fact, Billy, the episode we just had with David Josephs was tremendous, and he opened my eyes to something. It was almost like a Mulder X-Files moment, Billy, when he talked about maybe all of this is window dressing. Everything you see is window dressing and designed to have people go down these rabbit holes.
Right.
And the answer is as simple as one phone call from Alan Dulles to Swetra and the French OAS and Dulles' Nazi friends, and they bring in a professional hit team, and it was a hit. And everything else is designed. We're not supposed to see Swetra on the grassy knoll. We're looking for Cuban exiles. We're looking for the Umbrella Man. We're looking for, the Tramps. We're looking for, why was Oswald in Mexico City? What was Oswald doing in New Orleans when the whole thing was just Swetra and the hit team coming in? Maybe the Chicago, Miami prior plots were a dry run to get everything right for Dallas. And these guys come in and like hits that they've done all over the world. Dulles brings them in and the hit is done. So no, it definitely couldn't have been the KKK. You got to go by what we know, Billy, and we know that Dulles has been doing this stuff all over the world. And it might be just as simple as that, Billy. Like everything else is designed to go down this rabbit hole that leads nowhere. And Angleton and Phillips and these guys are doing all this stuff to get people to deflect, to follow them into an alleyway that leads nowhere. And here, it was just a simple hit, Billy.
Right. And the KKK is not that smart. They're not that organized. No. I mean, these guys are showing their cards, their membership cards to Joe and anybody who'll listen. So there's no way.
No.
But anyway, thank you, Molnar, for that question. All right, we'll take one more, Sean, for now, and then we got to take a quick break.
Take a break. Yep.
All right, so let's do this one more. I know we're going to have a little bit to say about this one. So John in Forest City, Pennsylvania, which is just about 10, 15 minutes away from us. I've been listening to your podcast for months now. I find it very deceptive You have great guests on, and you always back up research with solid documentation. The problem is conspiracies do not exist. People look for things that are hard to explain and chalk them up to conspiracies. I also don't understand why you glorify the Kennedys. They were clearly mobbed up. They built their empire on illegal activities, and the evidence is overwhelming that they killed Marilyn Monroe. I hope this makes it to one of your comment episodes because you seem to only air the positive ones. Peace out.
No, we don't. We air any comments. I mean, but Bill, he says there's no conspiracies, and then at the end of his sentence, he said there's a conspiracy against Marilyn Monroe. I mean, what is it, buddy?
So
I think evidence is overwhelming. Where? Show me where.
Yeah, I mean, John, you know, you don't live that far away. If you can come with evidence, I will sit you right here, right next to me. Right here, you have this spot. You can have a full hour, 2 hours with us to present all of the evidence that you have. That's overwhelming.
Yeah, Bill, keep John by you because I don't want John sitting by me with that comment. No offense.
I'd be happy to. I'd be happy to have him come on and present this overwhelming evidence. Just show.
Bill, here's the evidence we got: is we know Bobby Kennedy was in Gilroy, California, 350 miles away from Marilyn Monroe when she was killed. We know John Kennedy was nowhere near California. So it's just total nonsense. And then we know from the autopsy that Marilyn Monroe was either a suicide or an accidental overdose, Billy. I mean, come on with this stuff already. And the stuff about being mobbed up. I mean, now you're going to see, Bill, there's this new book, Chris Wallace from CNN, joining in on the CNN bashing of the Kennedys, talking about the mob stuff. And I talked about that documentary. Like we talked to Jim about this. People that investigated this, like John Binder, there's no evidence that there was anything that the mob could even do that in Chicago, Bill. And here's the thing that people miss about that Chicago election, Billy, about even if John Kennedy lost Illinois to Richard Nixon, he would still won the election, Billy. Don't you, these people do simple math? That was not enough. He won by like 80 electoral votes, Billy.
Right.
So even if he didn't win Illinois, and even if he didn't win West Virginia, which they talk about too, he's still going to win the election. So that didn't sway the national election. And the mob, the Chicago mob, did not control enough wards to do that, Billy. And the evidence presented shows that the voting was actually understated in the Democratic for the Democrats in the wards that the Mafia did control. So if there was a deal, the mob backstabbed the Kennedys. It wasn't the other way around. And there's no evidence of there being a deal other than hearsay and nonsense. So that's not overwhelming. Just because somebody says it so doesn't make it true.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, John, like I said, it's an open invitation. If you are willing to come on and present your solid evidence with documentation of all your claims, your non-conspiracy claims.
How about his conspiracy claim? But he said conspiracies don't exist, Billy.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Somehow these aren't conspiracies. So, John, again, we're not trying to run you down, John. Just, back up what you're claiming. Back up what you're claiming. Come on the program. That's what we have this program for. We invite these authors on, these researchers on, to show us the information that they've researched and come up with, and they have.
Bill, the first question I'm going to ask John when he's sitting next to you is, did you watch our episode with Jim DiEugenio on Kennedy's alleged womanizing? Because I've had people have this comment to me before, stuff like this similar, but they didn't watch that episode with Jim.
Right.
When he talked about the mob stuff and everything. So if you didn't watch that episode, I mean, what are you talking about? Because Jim gives the evidence right there to you. So watch the episode first, and then you could come on.
Exactly. All right. Well, thank you, John, for listening and for your support. We do appreciate it. All right, we're going to take a quick break to present some sponsors, and then we'll be right back.
DK's Corner has moved. Come see us in our brand new location at 201 Cherry Street in Jessup, Pennsylvania, right across from the Jessup Plaza. Enjoy a brand new menu with hot and cold sandwiches, soups, salads, pizza, delicious breakfast, including breakfast bowls and sandwiches, specialty coffees, and DK's famous Razzle Dazzle flavor shaken espressos. and still the best cheesesteaks around. Follow DK's Corner on Facebook and Instagram, or call them at 570-209-0278 to find out about their daily specials and catering. And DK's Corner now has beautiful outdoor seating for the summer. Don't feel like leaving the house? Call DK's Corner for delivery. And we thank DK's Corner for sponsoring That's Enough Out of You. DK's Corner, now in Jessup, Pennsylvania.
All right, Sean, we are back with our question comment episode. All right, this next one comes from Sonny Dalton in Galt, California. Peeps, love this podcast. 2 mob questions and 1 comment. Are you aware of an alleged meeting between the Westies and the Winter Hill Gang in Boston in 1982? Second question, what mob families outside of New York and Chicago had the most effective bosses? And then 1 comment, I know the book Double Cross is all lies, but Sam Giancana was a brutal gangster who killed a lot of people. He was no joke. So, Sean, you want to start with the Westies and Winter Hill meeting in 1982?
Yeah, there was a meeting. What happened was there was a guy by the name of Wilson, who was a member of the Winter Hill Gang up in Boston, and he was in prison with a couple of Westies guys, and they wanted to set up a meeting between their bosses. So they wanted to set up a meeting between Jimmy Coonan and Whitey Bulger. And this sent shockwaves through the underworld, Billy, because these 2 guys hooking up would have really been, I mean, and it wasn't just through the underworld, it was law enforcement. It was frightening for them to think they already were worried about Jimmy Coonan forming an alliance with the Gambino family. And to think that Jimmy Coonan would have an alliance with Whitey Bulger was frightening to everybody involved. But what happened is there was feelers about setting up the meeting. And as far as, we know Coonan never met face to face with Bulger because Whitey said, and if you could believe this, Billy, he says, those guys are crazy. We don't want to deal with them. I mean, think about
I believe it.
I mean,
everybody said that.
That tells you everything you want to know about the Westies, Billy.
Right.
When Whitey Bulger says these guys are too crazy to deal with. I mean,
yep.
So that's what I know about that. What was the other questions, Billy?
What mob families outside of New York and Chicago had the most effective bosses? And we're going to talk about, we're going to do an episode on the KC mob at some point, right?
Yes,
we'll talk about that. Yeah.
And one of the bosses would be Nick Savella from Kansas City, who had an alliance with the Pendergast Irish political machine. They call them the Irish mob, but they were more of like a corrupt political machine, kind of like Tammany Hall in New York. So Nick Savella would be one of the most powerful. I mean, he not only had that political power, but he had power with the casinos, Billy, with Vegas, and that family was really, really powerful. And on a national level too, they were really close with Chicago with the outfit. And then another boss, I would say, is Frank Ballesteri from Milwaukee. We talked about him a little bit. One of our patrons, Dan Hankey, is familiar with him. He's a Wisconsin guy, so he knows all about Ballesteri, but he was a vicious, vicious boss, Billy. Milwaukee did a lot of work for Chicago outfit. They did a lot of the dirty work. So those are 2. And we talked about others. We talked about Buffalino,
right.
Patriarcha up in New England. They were powerful. But I would say, Kansas City, we're going to do a whole episode on Kansas City, Billy, because the Pendergast political machine was behind Truman. They were really, they were very, very powerful nationally with politics, Bill. So that's where the Kansas City Cosa Nostra family really got a lot of their early power, and was from their partnership with Pendergast. But I will say, Billy, the book Double Cross puts, of course, Giancana as, back in Truman. And there's no evidence that Cosa Nostra ever backed President Truman whatsoever. It was the Pendergast machine, Billy, that was back in Truman. So let's get that out there. Just another thing of Double Cross is complete lies. And what was the last thing, Billy?
It was about Double Cross. It was about Sam Giancana being a brutal gangster who killed a lot of people.
Yeah, nobody's denying that. I mean, Giancana was absolutely brutal. And he was a killer right from the start, Billy. From a young age, he was running in street gangs, and nobody's denying that he was brutal. What I said all along is he was never the actual boss of the outfit. He was always a front boss. He was the street boss. You know, he was Uncle Junior while Tony's running the streets,
Right.
and Tony Accardo and Paul Rico were the guys that were in control of the outfit, and Gene kind of had answer to them, and that's what people don't understand. He was never the actual boss; he was the front boss.
Right.
But yeah, he was vicious, no doubt about that. Nobody's denying that. Killed a
Yep.
lot of people himself, and he ordered a lot of murders.
Yep. Yep. All right. Very good. Thank you, Sonny Dalton in California. All right. Next one, Sean, the detective of the New York Night.
Well, that's a great name.
Says Billy and Sean absolutely love the Project 2025 episode. Sean, your passion was so wonderful to see. You nailed it. I wish more individuals could see what a threat MAGA and Trump really are. You two are doing your part, and we thank you for it. Yeah. By the time this airs, we'll have already aired our follow-up to that episode with Bruce and Rick. So you want to see passion.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you can see I definitely got a little fired up in that episode, Billy, and you can see I was frustrated throughout. And one of the things, Billy, is that's getting me, like, I realized that there's this ugliness in America, Billy, that's here to stay now. It's here to stay. And the thing is, when the Proud Boys and neo-Nazis and white nationalists, when they're endorsing you, like they're endorsing Trump, and he embraces that endorsement, when
Right.
that's not a deal breaker for people to vote for Trump, there's a problem, Billy.
Sure.
Like, that's a problem. If that doesn't bother you, that the Proud Boys are supporting this guy and he endorses that, like he embraces that endorsement,
Yep.
that doesn't bother you when you go to vote. And this is what I got so frustrated, Bill. And one of your comments that you made in that episode, when you talked about, as a Jewish person, you know, the neo-Nazi support for MAGA really is frightening to you, and
Yeah.
for Trump. And that's what really hit me, is like, you know, we have this thing here, Billy, where the popular vote, if there was just a popular vote and the electoral college went away like it should, Republicans would never have a president ever, because
Right.
popular vote would never go to them, and Trump would lose the popular vote by millions.
Right.
You can't say half the country. I love when people say half the country loves Trump. No,
It's not half the country.
no, it's not. It's probably 60-70% hate him, but
Right.
it's the 30%, or maybe MAGA's 20%, but then you got another 10-15%, Billy, that are in that thing where they don't care. They're looking for ways to not vote for the Democrats, and they're so mad with the Democrats. And Bill, you know, I was flicking through the channels one day, and people were saying, one person was on there saying that the country's so divided right now that the only thing that could unite the country is if, like, an alien force came down and attacked the United States, everybody would unite. And I'm thinking, no, they wouldn't.
Oh,
That
no,
wouldn't
they
do it,
wouldn't.
because I said a portion of the people would side with the aliens.
Right.
MAGA would
Well,
side with the aliens.
here's what's going on now. We're and this will be, you know, a few weeks removed from what's happening, but we're having these hurricanes in the South, in Florida, North Carolina,
Right.
and MAGA is blaming the Democrats for
Right.
creating hurricanes and unleashing them on red states.
Right.
And Trump is telling people not to accept FEMA.
Yeah.
And you know, there are people whose homes
They're
have
dying.
been decimated,
Right.
that are refusing to accept anything from FEMA because they believe Trump. It's
Right.
gotten
That's
to the
unbelievable.
point, Sean, where, I mean, it's a parody of the way things were just a few years ago. We are now into, you know, Saturday Night Live territory, where
There's people that believe that weather machine, Billy.
yeah,
There's
of
people
course,
that believe that.
yeah,
And you know, there's still that ugliness though, Billy, that we're dehumanizing immigrants. Now they have to have a bad guy. Like, there's a portion of Americans that need a bad guy to blame. And it's like they forget that every one of us is as immigrants, unless you're Native American.
right,
And what bothers me, Billy, is being half Irish, half Polish. I'm from a family of immigrants. Italians are immigrants, and those are three ethnic groups that were treated terrible when they came to this country by the WASPs. By the
right,
WASPs that controlled everything. They were treated horribly, and they forget that. And now all of a sudden, the immigrants are the bad guys. And what Trump's doing with the Haitians, they're legal immigrants.
right,
They're legal immigrants, and he's still talking about mass deportations. What are you going to do? So people that are married to an immigrant, you're gonna deport them anyway? like they're here legally, you're gonna, and the thing is, Bill, there's this ugliness, there's still this racism, Billy, against immigrants, against, let's face it, Billy, black people, because look at our episodes, even in the JFK community, some of our lowest rated episodes are ones about black activism, like Malcolm X. That's a low rated episode, Billy. Martin Luther King episode wasn't that highly rated compared to the other ones. You know, the Freddie Hampton one, which I think was one of our best, that wasn't a high rated episode. And you still have this, and I'm going to say one more thing, Billy. I was talking to somebody at one of Nathan's games, just a random person, and he started off on Harris. I hate Harris, not voting for Harris. And I said, well, why? What don't you like about Harris? Well, I can't look at her TV. I turn it right off. I hear her on the radio. I turn it right off. I said, well, what about her don't you like? He just said, I can't look at her. I can't listen to her. Now, if he came back and he said, well, I didn't like her policy in Gaza. I didn't like what she did with Sirhan, or I don't like the border policies, I could say, okay, he's got reasons. But I said to him, I said, okay, so you just don't like her because she's a black woman. And I said that to him. And he said, what do you mean? That's not what I said. You put words in my mouth. I said, no, I'm actually not. That's exactly what you said. You said you don't want to look at her and you don't want to hear her.
Right.
So what am I supposed to take out of that, Billy?
Well, and that's the reasoning. I mean, you know, they can't come up with a reason why they support Trump either, you know, because he doesn't have any policies to support.
They'll just say the Democrats are worse. That's what they say. Democrats are worse. So Proud Boys doesn't bother them. Democrats are worse.
Yep. So that's, you know, we can
Bill,
go,
I do want to say
we can go on and on with that, Sean, but let's.
But let me just say one more thing, Billy, because, you know, the episode, like you said, Bruce and Rick, that episode is going to air. And, you know, Bruce and Rick are still really good friends. And I think one of the things that got so upset in that episode, Billy, is because only a couple weeks before we had the episode on Project 2025 that this listener's talking about, and they basically backed up everything we're saying.
Right.
They agreed with us on everything. And then because of Bobby Kennedy Jr. endorsing Trump, they kind of backtracked everything they said. And to me, it was frustrating. It was frustrating here because I like Bruce and Rick, and I don't think it was a good look for them, to be honest with you, because they backtracked on everything they said, Billy, and they were like looking for reasons to try to get, and I could see Bruce was really struggling with it. I can see it.
And I hope they listen to this episode or watch this episode, because there was something that I meant to bring up in that episode that I completely forgot about. And that was, you know, they're so confident, or well, they're not confident. I shouldn't say that. They're hoping that Trump listens to Bobby and, you know, brings him into the fold. But I don't know how you can be hopeful of that after having seen the debate. Because if he was going to do that, he would have talked about Bobby's policies in the debate. He didn't talk about any policies. In fact, he hasn't even talked to Vance about his own policies.
Oh.
So what makes you think he's going to, at any point in time?
He's not gonna.
He's not going to.
And one last thing, Billy, on that is Bruce and Rick also said that they didn't think Trump was involved with January 6th. And now, since that episode, we have the transcripts from Jack Smith that were released on the indictment in Trump's own words, Billy. Make them riot. Do it.
Right.
It's his own words.
Yep.
So,
and
he was involved. There's no doubt about that.
And the other thing is, Sean, you know, Trump has disavowed any connection to Project 2025. Although there's video of him in front of the Heritage, whatever that's called, the Heritage
Foundation.
Heritage Foundation. There's video of him praising the Heritage Foundation at their own function. So it's all bullshit. They know it. We know it. Everybody knows it. It's just that some people have the blinders on. Anyway, thank you, Detective of the New York Night. We appreciate it.
Love that name, Billy. Love that name.
Me too. All right. So Rawhead Rex was listening to the Ali podcast, and I know this won't be popular because everybody seems to love the guy, but not me. I never agreed with Vietnam, but had I been drafted and refused to go, I'm going to jail. Hell, if Ali actually went, he would have been there. He would have been there to entertain, let's be honest. Also, his reason for not wanting to go was because violence is against his religion. Really? What did he think boxing was? Speaking of religion, One time I saw an old Mike Douglas show he was on with Joe Namath, I think it was, and they asked him about some R-rated movie out at the time. He took big offense because seeing naked women was against his religion, but I guess fathering children with women who are not his wife is okay. Also, look at the awful names he was calling Frazier before their matches. What kind of a person does that? Ali was a hypocrite. Do as I say, not as I do. I love your show. I just have different feelings on Ali. Sincerely, Rawhead Rex.
Well, I mean, I understand where Rawhead's coming from. I really do. But
Sure.
go ahead.
No, and I agree with him. I think there's definitely a lot of
Sure.
hypocrisy with Ali.
Yeah,
but he was an entertainer. And listen, as far as guys going to war who were celebrities, I mean, Elvis went to war. Major League Baseball players went to war.
Williams.
Yeah, I mean, these guys weren't there to entertain. They were, not that I don't know if they were ever actually in harm's way.
I think Elvis might have been, Billy, but Ted Williams was actually in combat. He was
right.
He was but some of them are there, Billy. They're not going to put them in harm's way. There's some of them that they won't, but there's some that were different, like Ted Williams. But I don't disagree with a lot of what Ra had said there. Ali's definitely a controversial figure, and I actually for a long time struggled with that because of the Vietnam issue. I really did until I kind of changed my mind on that. But I see where Rawhead's coming from.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people had to flee to Canada.
Yeah.
But in fairness, though, to Ali, he did suffer some consequences. I mean, he wasn't allowed to to ply his trade. He wasn't allowed to.
But he didn't go to jail, like Rawhead's saying.
No, certainly not.
Rawhead Rex is in jail.
Right. Oh, absolutely. We'd be in jail too, for sure. But again, it's celebrities have certain status and things that they can do that we can't do. That's just the way it is. I mean, that's why they make money. That's why they're interesting people, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, Rawhead Rex, thank you. That's a great comment. We really do appreciate it. And the thing with the fathering children, I mean, show me an athlete that doesn't do that. There aren't very many.
Hard to find, Billy, hard to find.
All right, next one comes from our friend Dan Henke, Latest Flame, who is our Patreon, and we've had him on before. And not sure, Sean, you'll be able to figure out which episode this is. He's saying, great episode. I must admit, it's a bummer to hear Jim Garrison did some favors for Perry Russo.
Crumpton.
Oh, it's the Crumpton episode.
We have with Crumpton and Mark.
Okay. But is there hard evidence for that? Did the media locate the evidence and excoriate Garrison for this? Was Jim charged over this or punished by the bar at all? It's been years since I've read about Garrison, but if this story is true, that's what a guy like Fred Litwin would hang his hat on, then shut his brain off. Speaking of,
Who cares about Fred Litwin though? Who cares? But go ahead.
Right. Speaking of, I'm calling it now like the superfans would with Ditka versus the Giants. Matt Crumpton 56, Fred Litwin 3 final score.
I wouldn't even give him a 3-point field goal, Billy. Litwin's terrible. I don't even want to talk about Litwin. Put him with Posner and the rest of them.
Right.
Disgust me on every level. But the first part of that, I don't know. Matt mentioned that on our episode. I have to look into that more about Garrison. But listen, like we told Matt, like Garrison was under attack. He was, he wasn't perfect, but he fought the good fight, Billy. He was up against the gorilla, and the Farry death, which is very suspicious, ruined his case. The fact that Richard Helms and the Get Garrison group was after him at the CIA, they infiltrated him. Garrison was too trusting. That was one of his faults. He trusted a lot of people. They infiltrated him. They stole files from him. They manipulated different things, and people he trusted made him look silly later. So there was a lot of things there with Garrison. But the thing that, the focus that I have is that this is a guy who fought the fight, Billy. He was up against the gorilla, and he fought the gorilla right to the end. And to me, he's a hero, Billy. Heroes are going to be, you're going to have faults with them, Billy. There's going to be faults. He was an ambitious DA. There's no doubt about that. Show me one that isn't, Billy. Kamala
Right.
Harris was too. That's what they do, Billy.
Sure.
You know, so I mean, I don't know. To me, Garrison's a hero.
Yeah.
Put a statue up for him.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that's ever going to happen.
No, well, certainly not. But
all right. And then he's got one more question. If the plot failed in Dallas, shooters got cold feet, or William Greer does his job and stands on the gas after the first shot, are there indications in the evidence that suggest a contingency plan in Dallas? As to the files, I suspect the agencies have destroyed anything that could be considered a smoking gun. And I suspect they did that back in the 70s, except for Secret Service, who did so in the 90s. Unless CIA, as arrogant and proud as they are, has a remote sub-basement library known to 5 or 6 people where they keep records never provided to Congress.
probably do.
Yeah.
But interesting thing on William Greer, the driver, Billy. He was the Kennedy's regular driver, died under very suspicious circumstances. I believe maybe a month before Dallas, or maybe a month and a half. That needs to be looked into more, Billy. That's one aspect of the case that hasn't been looked into. And another thing about Greer, Billy, is his family was from Northern Ireland and he was Protestant. And this came out later on where, he talked about they didn't like Kennedy because he was Catholic. The situation, we had episodes on the Northern Ireland situation there in the north of Ireland about the Protestant Catholic, the Irish and the British fighting 800 years. And there's definitely, a hatred there. So, Greer as a Protestant, hated Kennedy, and he was pretty open about that later. His family, they didn't like Kennedy, and he was open about that. But I think you really have to look into that death of Kennedy's driver. I think that's one of the many aspects, Billy, that need to be looked into a little bit more. And who knows, maybe it's one of those the pitfalls or whatever that David Joseph talks about. But
rabbit holes, yeah.
I think we should look into it. I think we should look into it. What else was he talking about there, Billy? About the file?
Yeah, the contingency.
They've had him too long, Billy. They've had him too long. Yep. They probably, any smoking gun that's in there, they probably wiped it. They wiped it.
No question. All right, thanks, Dan. Appreciate the question. All right, we'll do a couple more, Sean. We'll take another break. Okay. This one comes from David Arbuckle. The bullet fragments in the front can probably be attributed to the bullet hole, either in the front window or possibly the bullet hole in the chrome above the window of JFK's limo. That's the comment, Sean. I don't know if you have a response to that, but.
Well, just the thing is, Henry Lee, the great forensic pathologist, or criminologist, whatever his title is, he told Jim DiEugenio that, since the back wound to Kennedy wasn't traced, you really can't tell, what shot came from what direction. There's just no way. And again, it goes to what David Joseph talks about with the control of the autopsy, Billy. Admiral Galloway, Curtis LeMay, the military was controlling the autopsy. Wasn't the Mafia, and it wasn't the KKK, and we don't know, what direction the bullets were coming from. We could just go off the witnesses that say they were coming from, some from the back, some from the front. So, right there, it can't be one shooter shooting from 2 different directions.
Right. Exactly. All right. Thank you, David. This one comes from Sonity. Sean and Bill, your knowledge and recall is amazing. Appreciate your passion. As far as the JFK hit, all roads seem to lead to anti-Castro guerrillas in Florida. Okay.
Well, we know about Sergio Kacha-Smith, and he was working with Oswald, the Newman building in New Orleans. We talked about that, and his connection to Guy Bannister, and certainly the Cuban exiles, were involved at some level. But again, is David Joseph right, where all that's a distraction, Billy? All that is to lead us down a path, Billy, that doesn't get you to who killed John Kennedy.
Right.
And at this point, I'm starting to see that, he might be onto something, Billy. He might be onto something.
Yeah, I think there's a whole lot of noise, and it's done purposefully, obviously, but I think the explanation could be a lot simpler.
It's just a hit, Billy. Maybe that's the answer.
Maybe. And one thing we know for certain is it was not Oswald.
No. And another thing I know is that Alan Dulles was centrally involved at some level. He was
Right.
right in the middle of this. And I have
Speaking
no
of
doubt.
that, and speaking of that, and thank you, Sonity. This one comes from Paul and Diana Thomas. This is awesome. I read something about Alan Dulles that was shared on another platform that was written by another JFK researcher. I think he was a Warren Commission defender / lone nutter. He wrote that Dulles and the Kennedys were good friends and were very respectful of each other, that Dulles was a gentleman and that he was very kind and protective of JFK, and that he worked alongside JFK very respectfully, and that his purpose for serving on the Warren Commission was to protect JFK's reputation / legacy by not letting things come out about his extramarital affairs.
Here we go.
He also stated that Dulles remained close with Bobby Kennedy after the assassination, that they remained good friends, and he repeatedly stated that Dulles was a gentleman. Sean, I don't even know where to start with that one.
Well, Billy, I mean, none of that is true. But the one thing is that, you know, I think there was, before John Kennedy was president, I think there was a certain level of respect that Alan Dulles had for John Kennedy, though. Because, you know, he was, you know, familiar with John Kennedy. He knew, of course, old man Kennedy. And I think, you know, even when he first keeps Dulles on as director, I think there was still a certain respect. You know, John Kennedy was, he's the one that gave Alan Dulles the first James Bond novel that Dulles got into, Billy. So there was a respectful relationship, I think, early. And I think that sizzled really quick. And of course, after Kennedy fires Dulles, and we talked to Lisa Pease about this, I think in Dulles's brain, as soon as he's fired, he's already thinking about ways to get back. And that might have been the genesis of everything that's going to happen on the road. So any respect that they did have, I mean, it's laughable to think that Dulles was on the Warren Commission to protect Kennedy, and because none of anything about extramarital affairs came up anyway during that.
Well, what would that have to do with the assassination?
Nothing to do with anything. Nothing.
That's
So
crazy.
that's laughable. The relationship that Alan Dulles had with Bobby Kennedy later, it was not good. I mean, we talked about Bobby. Bobby suspected the CIA. He suspected people like Alan Dulles were involved. So no, that's all laughable. That they had some kind of great relationship. That's no.
Yeah. All right. So thank you, Paul and Diana Thomas. I'm sure it's either Paul or Diana writing this, but thank you for that. That gave us a little bit of a chuckle. All right. We'll take a quick break, Sean. We'll come back and we'll finish these up. Yeah, we'll be right back. And we would like to thank our sponsor, Gracious Day Grains. Sean, you like to eat healthy, don't you?
Always, buddy. I try to eat healthy as much as I can.
Yeah, and there is nothing healthier than what they call like farm to table, right? So when you can get something right from the ground and make it and then put it right on your table. And Gracious Day Grains, they have a tremendous selection, and it's totally organic. Everything is, they don't use any sort of herbicides or pesticides or anything like that. They have a bunch of different products on their website, Gracious Day Grains. So if you go to graciousdaymilling.com, you'll find a bunch of great stuff there, Sean.
Yeah, you will, Billy. And it's owned by Tom Maxey, who's a great guy from Virginia. He's a truth seeker, just like me and you, buddy. And Tom's growing philosophy follows the wisdom of farmers of centuries past. And a quote from Tom is, "If we practice the right rotations, we exclude the bugs and weeds without needing herbicides or pesticides." So, I mean, this is great, Billy. I mean, what he's doing is fantastic.
There's cornbread mix, there's cornmeal, popcorn he sells, buckwheat Sean, have you had buckwheat pancakes?
No, buddy.
Oh my, they're delicious. I love buckwheat pancakes. And Gracious Day Grains sells buckwheat pancakes. Just go to their website and you'll be able to find all of this stuff there. You can order it right off the website. You can find out all about how they farm and their whole philosophy, Tom's philosophy. It's great stuff.
It really is, Billy. And one of the things he does is he grinds small batches at very low temperatures, which retains the flavor and the freshness.
Of course. And it, I mean, it can't get any fresher than that. I mean, it's literally right from the ground. So again, go to graciousdaymilling.com and just, take a look on there. You can order whatever you want and they'll send it right to your door. I mean, again, it doesn't get any fresher than that, right from Tom's farm to your door to your table. So
absolutely. And eat healthy and you'll feel better.
Absolutely. I wish I could do that. I wish I could eat healthier, Sean.
We'll start with Tom's stuff, buddy.
I'm going to order some of those buckwheat pancakes. I love
There you go. I'm going to try them too, Billy.
Yeah, they're really good. All right. Gracious Day. We thank Gracious Day Grains for their sponsorship.
Thank you.
That's Enough Out of You is also sponsored by Case Quattro Winery, featuring over 20 flavors of wine, from dry red, dry white, and fruit for your sampling pleasure. Case Quattro Winery offers entertainment, parties, and private events. Now serving a full menu with a little something for everyone, including appetizers, salads, dinners, pizza, and desserts. Case Quattro has some of the best live entertainment in the area, with comedy and karaoke nights and live bands. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram for all of our upcoming events. And if you mention the code OUTA, that's OUTTA, you get 15% off of your order. Located on Main Street in Peckville, Pennsylvania, call 570-382-3855 for more information. And we thank Case Quattro Winery for their support. All right, we are back, and we've got a few more of these questions and comments to go, and then we will wrap up this week's episode. This one comes from Stuart Callio, 4843. So Stuart says, the Tower Commission claimed that the origin of the U.S. arms sales to Iran in the Iran-Contra affair was a memorandum written by Theodore Shackley, dated November 22nd, 1984. This is the basis for the subsequent investigations, limiting their scope to no earlier than 1984, thus curtailing attention being directed at the October surprise of 1980, which Shackley was also involved in. As chief of station at JM Wave, Shackley would have been reading the still withheld, denied in full, monthly reports submitted by George Joannides, detailing DRE propaganda operations in 1963. In Watergate, when H.R. Haldeman delivered Richard Nixon's cryptic "The Whole Bay of Pigs Thing" message to CIA Director Richard Helms as a cryptic reference to the assassination of JFK, in the room with DCI Helms was Deputy Director Vernon Walters, in the Iran-Contra affair, when Theodore Shackley submitted a memorandum dated November 22nd, 1984, suggesting arms to Iran that had in fact been ongoing since the October surprise of 1980, he directed the memo to State Department Ambassador at Large Vernon Walters. Was Shackley's invocation of the politically symbolic date of November 22nd a cryptic announcement of the stakes of the cover-up of the Iran-Contra affair? And then he goes on, at JM Wave, Shackley had some very interesting individuals under his authority, and there were Pathfinder operatives in the covert Contra arms pipeline. The real diversion in the Iran-Contra affair was a diversion of the public's attention. That's a lot, Sean.
There's a lot there, Billy. First of all, Ted Shackley ran the JM Wave station. We talked about JM Wave, just had a question about the Cuban exiles there, a lot running out of there, Miami. And we should probably do an episode on Iran-Contra at some point. We did one on the Iran hostages where we had Hopkins on.
Yeah.
But that was such a very bad scandal, Billy. When you think about it, Reagan and Bush selling arms to Iran to use the money to back the Contras and against the Sandinistas, and the Contras were awful. And then the October surprise he mentions, of course, we talked about that. Reagan and Bush making a deal to keep the hostages there so they could beat Jimmy Carter in the election, and release them after. And it just, all that stuff that he talked about. He talks about Operation Pathfinder there. Of course, that was the operation to kill Castro, and where the assassins actually flipped to Dallas. So there's a lot there, Billy. We could do a whole episode on that question, and we just don't have the time to get into everything on there. But we'll do an episode down the road on Iran-Contra, and we'll talk more about that, and we'll bring up Shackley and some of the names.
Yeah.
Joe Anides, of course, such a key figure in everything, the CIA was doing, with Oswald in New Orleans, and of course later on with the House Select Committee on Assassination. He basically manipulates everything there, lies to Blakey at the HSCA. So we'll get into all that down in another episode, Bill. There's so much there. That question there, that's a whole episode.
Sure is. All right, thank you, Stuart. Appreciate it. All right, from Giordano, our buddy in Rome, Italy. Sean, I took your advice and started watching Tulsa King. I'm really not feeling it. The acting is solid and Stallone is a superstar, but the writing seems off. Do you really think the mob stuff is realistic? I don't know why you picked Oklahoma to host a mob show. I value your opinion, so change my mind.
Well, I didn't pick it, Giordano. I didn't write the script, but I mean, I think Giordano's looking at it from a perspective of he's in Italy, Bill, and he's looking at the Italian mafia. He's looking at the Camorra and the Ndrangheta and the Sicilian mafia, which is so different than the American Cosa Nostra, Bill. We talked about that. They're so vicious. I mean, absolutely vicious. I mean, they're more comparable to the Medellin drug cartels and Pablo Escobar and them than they would be the American Cosa Nostra, because American Cosa Nostra wouldn't do half the stuff that the Italian mob does in Italy. Not even close, Billy, in the way they operate. So I think it is. I think Tulsa King is very realistic, Bill, the mob stuff. I think the acting is very good. I think we talked about Frank Grillo. I think he's a tremendous actor. I think the Bevilacqua character that he's playing, the Kansas City mob boss, is very similar to Nick Savella. I think Neil McDonough is very similar to Tom Pendergast. So I think some of the guys that Bevilacqua's crew is very realistic, and I think so is the New York mob, Billy. I think Dominic Lambertozzi is a tremendous actor. I think the crew that he has there is very realistic, and I think if Kansas City, if Oklahoma did have any organized crime, it would have been covered by Kansas City. So I think that's realistic. And Billy, one of the things that was mentioned, I don't know if you're up to, I think it was episode 3, but the scene where Bevilacqua and his right hand is sitting down with Stallone, and they're trying to force his hand there.
Yeah, I didn't see that one yet.
Here's Bevilacqua just says, I'll just give you a little thing here. He gives them history of when Joe and Pete Incervazzi, I believe the name was, or Giovanni, Joe and Pete Giovanni, came to Kansas City during Prohibition. They set up shop, and then Bevilacqua said they brought in my grandfather, and we've run Kansas City 4 generations. Those names are true, Bill. Joe and Pete Giovanni. That's true. They're the first bosses of Kansas City. So they dropped those names that are their real life, organized crime figures. So I thought that scene was very realistic, and I think Tulsa King's been really good, Billy. I think, it's you're not going to have total realism in.
No, it's definitely there's a lot of exaggeration there, and there's a lot of creativity. But I think it's a fun. It's a fish out of water with a ragtag crew. I mean, that's essentially what the story is, and it's
the ragtag crew is funny, Billy. They're
right,
really
exactly.
They're characters but I think the mob stuff, Bill, like when you just look at the Kansas City mob and the New York crime family, I think that's pretty realistic. I think that's, the acting's good. I think the writing is good on that,
right.
But again, you can't compare that to like Giordano. He doesn't have the, understanding of American Cosa Nostra, Billy. He doesn't really follow it. He doesn't know what goes on. And he's just comparing that from his perspective of the mobs in Italy and Sicily, which are totally different than the American mob.
Yep.
So it wouldn't be realistic in his point of view. So I see what he's saying.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Giordano. Appreciate it. And, keep watching. I mean, if you don't enjoy it, don't watch it. But,
he enjoys it, Bill. He likes it. But I think, I thought you meant a show, Billy.
No. I'm talking about Tulsa King. Tulsa
I don't know. It's not for him, Billy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not for everybody, but we like it. So, all right. Thank you. All right. One more, Sean. We've got LAGS up with the flag of Zoran.
What does that mean, Billy?
I don't know.
Is that a Game of Thrones? Is that from Game of Thrones?
No, that's not Game of Thrones. I was
It's got to
thinking,
be a TV reference, right? Something, the TV or movie.
I don't know. I was thinking like, is it Ben Stiller or what was that movie? Was it Adam Sandler or something? Something about
Yeah. Wasn't there Zoran? Something.
the Zohan.
Zohan. I don't know.
Zohan. I don't know. Anyway, maybe you could lags up with the flag of Zoran. Maybe you could let us know what that reference is. Anyway, Billy and Sean, 2 questions. Hollywood seems to put the Westies at odds with the Italian mafia. Is this accurate? Did they actually go to war with each other? I always felt that they were partners. Question 2, why do people continue to try and push the Marilyn Kennedy's mob stuff when you guys point out that most of it is easily debunked?
Well, the first question, Billy, is no, the Westies were never at war with the mafia. We talked about that. The war was actually with Mickey Spillane, who ran the Irish mob in Hell's Kitchen before the Westies. And he was actually at war with the Westies and with the Gambino family and with the Genovese family. But once the Westies make a deal with the Gambino family, there was a partnership and a respect there, Billy. And you could see that in, John Elite has a podcast, and he's a former Albanian associate of the Gambino family, really close to John Gotti Sr. and Jr. And he talks about the respect that they had for the Westies, and especially Jimmy Coonan. So the respect that Jimmy Coonan had on the streets, they were very close with the mafia. They were never at odds. There was never any war between the Westies. At anything, Billy, Castellano wanted him to calm down, and who does he send to work with them is Roy DeMeo, who's a serial killer, and he's not calming down the Westies. He's enjoying what they're doing. So, no, there was never any friction. The only friction, Billy, was leading up to that, the meeting when the Westies had guys outside that were going to blow up the whole block because they didn't know if the Gambino family and it was actually the 5 families, the commission, they didn't know if they were going to try to kill them. Right. Or if they were going to do, partnership with them. And they elected to go down the route of being partners with them. So no, after that, there was no friction.
And what was the episode that we did on that, Sean? Was it the Roy DeMeo episode, or?
I think we did a couple, Billy. We did the one that's he's not staying for dinner. I think it was the title of that. That was on a lot of Roy DeMeo, a lot on the Westies. And we also mentioned the Westies, I think then we mentioned them in the Gambino, or the one we did on Gotti, maybe. We did a couple that we mentioned the Westies, but the one about the Mayo, the Westies are mentioned quite a bit.
Yeah.
We even did a Patreon. We told a lot of stories that people probably don't know that's on our Patreon. That's another reason you got to be on there, Billy, to get to speak.
Exactly.
What was the second part of that question, Billy?
Second one was one we've talked about over and over and over, the Marilyn Kennedy's mob stuff. We've had Don on many times, and hopefully, hopefully we'll have, what's that?
Don's coming back. He'll be back. He's going through some stuff right now I don't want to talk about, but prayers out to Don, but he'll be on. He'll be coming back. Great friend, keep in touch with him. And he's definitely coming back to talk about David Heyman. David Heyman caused a lot of this stuff. He made up these 20 interviews he had with people to talk about JFK and Marilyn Monroe, and the mainstream media ran with it. And why did he do that, Billy? Because number one, it makes a ton of money. You put the Kennedys, the mob, and Marilyn Monroe in a story, it makes a lot of money. And the thing is, people just keep saying it over and over, and if people keep repeating it, other people are going to think it's true because you got to believe everything you hear, right, Billy?
Oh, yeah.
Somebody's saying it doesn't make it true.
Of course.
So,
all right. Well, that wraps up another great question, comment episode.
Yeah, this was a good one, Billy. A lot of great stuff.
Yeah, and great because of our listeners, because they have tremendous questions, tremendous comments, and we appreciate them. Again, we'll repeat our Patreon, like, subscribe, comment, all of that stuff. Please do that. That helps us if you want this program to continue and to be able to grow. We need your help. We need your support.
We need your help. And keep those questions coming in because we're still behind, Billy. I got like 50 questions already we didn't get to. So just keep them coming. We'll get to them. Some of them are so detailed, though, Billy. It takes, like, what did we do there? Like 12, 15, whatever?
15, yeah.
15. Yeah. So, I mean, it's hard to get to a lot of them because they're not, quick answers on a lot of these.
Right. Sure.
But keep them coming. We enjoy them, and they're always great. And I think they really add something to our show, Billy, because I think you said one time this is a very unique that we do whole shows dedicated to our listeners and their feedback.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's some podcasts that may take a question or two, but we try to get them all. So, all right. Well, thank you, everybody. We do appreciate it. And that's enough out of you.
Good night, everybody.
That's Enough Out of You podcast is executive produced and written by Bill Rader and Sean Kane and edited by Bill Rader. The That's Enough Out of You podcast and logo are exclusive property of Bags of Chicken, LLC. Any rebroadcast, retransmission, or accounts of this podcast without the express written consent of Bags of Chicken, LLC is prohibited. So don't even try it.